Good evening, everyone, on this rainy Thursday evening. Welcome to the uh, third meeting of the Special Committee on Racial Equity this calendar year, this fiscal year for the Community Board 8 in the Bronx. We are beginning just a few minutes late, so thank you all for joining us. I'm here joined by the Vice Chair of the committee, Althea.
Hello.
Althea, how do you pronounce your last name? I feel like I got
Ebo.
Ebo. And I'm Margaret Della. I'm the chair of the committee. And tonight we do not have quorum. Well, no, we may have quorum because we have three community members. We have three members.
Okay.
So we may have quorum. So I guess we could, and I'm sure someone will tell me if I'm wrong, but to visit the minutes of September, and November of 2025. I think we're missing one.
One.
Yeah, we're missing January.
Let me just pull this up.
Oh no, he did put it here. I'm sorry. So there's September, there's December, and then this is from May 2025. So we have not yet have quorum until this evening. So I will give you a few minutes if you feel as though you need to review these documents, but these are the minutes of the last three meetings.
I have them. I did look at them. All right, this is
Yeah, that's December and September. So barring any concerns or edits that you have, do you have any reason to vote no or to abstain?
no, I don't. I guess the only one that I don't know anything about is May 1st.
Okay. It was very brief because it was a planning meeting and basically just working through the final revisions of our interim report.
Right.
And December 2024. 25. So without any abstentions or objections, we're voting in favor of the minutes.
Seconded.
Cool. Passes unanimously. Okay, so a couple of things just to go over tonight. Some of the high level agenda items are the community reflections, just on some things that have been going on recently. Certainly, we want to touch base on the recommendations of the Broadway corridor and see where our respective standing committees are, and then discuss the final meeting that we'll have this fiscal year, which I'm anticipating will be the first Thursday of May, unless the community board tells us that we have a conflict or if any of our community members have a conflict. So that is the agenda for tonight. Anything you'd like to add? Okay. So first things first, I guess I just wanted to recap the last several months and issues that have come up in front of either the full board executive or any of the standing committees that I think sort of relates to SCREE. Certainly in, I believe, the end of 2025, it was an issue that was reported a few times over in the fall of 2025, but we did not report on it at the December meeting, but it did come up at the full board meeting. And that was a hate group was written on one of the local businesses, and I believe with sort of an incendiary intent. And so that issue was brought up at the full board. uh, and the public safety meeting. So in front of one of our local vendors, someone had written KKK on it, and it was investigated by NYPD. NYPD, just by the nature of how hate crime is classified or characterized within the New York City statute, that they determined that it did not amount to a hate crime because it was not focused on one specific individual, even though the business itself um, could have been considered the individual or the entity that the hateful language was directed at. So I believe Chair Reyes and Vice Chair Villaverde had advanced their concerns about the issue being brought up to New York State. And Julie, if you care to chime in, I do not believe there's been any further um, communication on this issue, but please clarify if you know of anything.
No, there hasn't been an update yet. Vice Chair Villaverde also asked Councilmember Newens to look into the matter as well. So we're waiting for a response.
So we're having a hard time hearing you, but I believe you said that there has not been a response yet from New York State, but that you're going to look into it. So we'll report back, or certainly, the community can follow, the full board or the public safety meeting, to see if there's any, update in the interim. Um, just in the last probably 6 weeks, we've had a number of really violent situations in the community. One was a domestic violence situation in which two people of the same family were murdered, and one young man who was just shot in the street at one of the busiest intersections in the neighborhood, who's beloved and well known in the community, CJ Redding. And so, you know, just thinking about what's been going on in our immediate community and more globally, we just celebrated Black History Month, Women's History Month is this month, and it certainly feels like there's a lot going on under the sun. So I just wanted to, I guess, take a minute and reflect on how painful some of these situations are for us as community members, and that there's uh, a lot of pain that families in particular are carrying with them these days. And I just wanted to open it up there if there's any community reflections, if there's anything else we'd want to discuss, and just give us a second to reflect on this moment.
I mean, I went to the vigil,
Yeah,
and that was heartbreaking.
yeah,
It was heartbreaking seeing that family in that pain.
yeah.
And I mean, what was even more heartbreaking about it is their lack of not so much trust, but they feel let down
Mhm.
by their political representatives, by
Mhm.
they're thinking like, well, what are you going to say to us? What are you really going to do?
Yeah,
So, that was very sad to hear as well.
yeah,
They
yeah,
they want something done, they want justice, but they don't have faith
yeah,
in the system at all.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And just to see the students, colleagues just in shock. I mean, uh, young people having to go through something so horrific, and just the immediate community of the businesses and people just coming off the train. Yeah, I attended the vigil too, and it was just, the pain was just palpable, and it continues. Even just going through that intersection, it just weighs heavy on such a young man. His life taken so abruptly and so nonsensically, like, just that's the part that is painful for someone who didn't even know him, but just to think about the promise and opportunity and the love that his family held for him is really painful. Um, so certainly if you did hear of recommendations on things that we could do, I know that I did see Assembly Member Dinowitz, Council Member Dinowitz there. And I know that Assemblymember Dinowitz has given money towards youth programs to be sure that there's a lot of opportunities in the community. Just thinking about NYPD Explorers and working with NYPD that have already tried to redirect some young people into the Explorers program where they can, take excursions and learn and develop their skills in a whole host of different ways. But certainly I think we as a community want to know what else we can do for young people to keep them engaged, growing, safe. I don't know what else.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know that at one public safety meeting, a gentleman came and he was looking for help to help young men, especially young men of color. And I don't know if he came away feeling like there was any support, real
Yeah,
tangible support. So I
yeah,
think there is a bit of a disconnect between what community groups are doing and what something like the community board and the politicians say that they can do. There's still some kind of like this gap and a disconnect where these groups are able to plug into getting some help, like a place. He was looking for space, to set something up to help engage young men
yeah,
and young people. So there just still seemed to me a bit of a disconnect there because I think he went away thinking, okay, they've got my name and number, but I don't know if I'm going to hear back from anybody.
yeah,
So I don't know that I always feel that it's always that disconnect, and that's something I think we can work on is how can we connect with all these groups that really want to do something,
yeah,
but don't have the experience in dealing with, the grant writing, the this or that, the fiddling
yeah.
around with sort of like the political side, and getting into that kind of like group and talking to the right people to get the
Mm-hmm.
help.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's an issue there.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe perhaps one of the action steps that we could recommend is we had been talking with Health and Human Services Committee, the Youth Committee, and Public Safety all around like sort of in different directions, but all essentially talking about how can we help redirect youth? What are we going to do in this moment? I mean, a lot of it was, well, not a lot of it, but part of it was talking about the Broadway corridor because businesses were expressing that youth were sort of like just getting into youth, that young brain without the
Yeah.
executive function totally grown and developed yet. Yeah. But like making sure that young people are being redirected, staying safe, going to places where they should be, playing ball or community centers or whatever. And so perhaps this is a call to action where we could bring us together or make the recommendation that these standing committees come together to talk about what are plausible next steps, and having youth lead the conversation. To your point, many times over, and have them ask for what they want. And we can talk with Cesar and whoever else is on the youth committee. Okay. Um, yeah, absolutely. So, perhaps that could be one of our next steps or one of the ways, because I know that the Public Safety Committee is talking with the Bronx DA about what can be done for raise the age, but I don't think anyone is looking forward to going backwards.
No, because I'll keep on using myself about that one, but
Yeah,
that's not the way forward, in my opinion.
yeah. Um, and I think we should be working with those standing committees that's our recommendation, that we could work with those standing committees, or at least be a part of the conversation, or just initiate this conversation if they would welcome it. But to be sure that we're not going down this very isolated path with blinders on, because we as a community have already been there. We've already been through stop and frisk. We've already been through a whole host of other sort of spirit squashing efforts to advance safety that didn't result in safer streets or safer kids or anything along those lines.
Agreed.
Okay, so that's one action step. And I think there was something else that I was thinking of as we were talking, but I blanked on it, so I'll come back. So just, this kind of transitions us into Broadway corridor recommendations, and some of the recommendations that had been made by our committee and by other committees that we've been a part of. So I just wanted to go through each of the standing committees and sort of do a temperature check, or sort of like a state of the state. What have they been doing? What could we report on, etc. And then we can go from there. So Broadway corridor recommendations, aging, not to my knowledge, has anything been addressed. I don't know that it's necessarily applicable. Let me just go through the ones that I think are not applicable. Aging, budget, because budget doesn't really get into action steps like that. It's really just budget. Housing, law, rules and ethics, parks and recreation. Then I think there's something. So any disagreement on that?
No.
Okay. So the standing committees that I think do have something to do, or ways that they could take action if they chose to, or some of them really are taking action. Let's just start with what is super amazing by the Economic Development Committee. So the chair led the walkthrough along the Broadway corridor at the very last day of October. And she had been attempting to lead another walkthrough, but we really want to get MTA there. So she had been talking about trying to, just in the last couple of weeks, trying to get one in March. The chair also led a conversation with merchants near 225th, because several of those merchants have closed their doors because of the the MTA mess, and their client base has just fell off a cliff.
On 25th?
Yeah,
Oh,
225th and Broadway.
242nd, because I wondered if they're having experience, because it's like.
Yeah, I mean, that one has been sort of dealt with separately, because they're like, those merchants there, they've just had MTA mess for probably 5 or 6 years at this point.
Because now they just have these.
Yeah.
Just nothing there.
I feel like they've just
You
like
drive
given up
past it,
and trying to take
you
action.
probably have, yeah, because you drive past. If you're driving past, you think, okay, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
they've
what I
had
feel.
so many
Yeah.
MTA hassles that I feel like now they just keep it moving. So but 225th, there's been a bunch of vendors who have come forth to say they can't pay their rent, that they're at the risk of closing, or that vendors have closed their doors.
Wow.
So I know that Economic Development was trying to speak with those vendors and see what could be done, perhaps connecting them with SBS, small business services, that potentially could help them out with loans or what have you. But at the end of the day, if your client base is gone, what are you going to take out a loan for?
Right.
Like,
That's not.
no one can see your business. No one can park there and pick up a cake or pick up something from the store, or even know that you're open, because it's just,
Yeah.
it looks
And they're all
horrendous.
small. They're all small
Yeah,
businesses.
they're all
right
small.
there. That stretch
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about there, they're all small
Mhm.
businesses.
Yeah. Yeah. And then on the other side, you have the big box stores. You have the Applebee's, Chase, Planet Fitness, or whatever that gym is going to be called now, or whatever. So I don't know that like once you actually start going to 225th towards Target, I don't know that those businesses have been a part of the conversation. I just know that it's one that's right around
Right.
225th, all the ones that you described, the small businesses. Yeah.
Right. I'd expect that they feel like they're all right because they've got their own parking, they got, you know,
Yeah.
they're kind of like away from,
Yeah.
you get off the train, you just go straight over there.
Yeah. And they have the
So-
big box notoriety. Yeah.
People know where they're at. Yeah, that's
Yeah. So I know the EDC is working on that
Okay.
steadily. They're also working on the K-pop businesses, which is separate, but
Yeah.
but nonetheless important. Oh, I also forgot to mention that education, libraries, and culture, like maybe we want to loop them in with this conversation,
Yeah.
just because the DOE is an important partner with public safety, with youth. So we can add them in and make some recommendations. Environment and sanitation, they did report that they had made a request for additional garbage containers along the corridor. I can check in with the chair and see where those requests stand. I mean, it still looks pretty terrible. I think, let's just cut to the chase. I know that TNT, Traffic and Transportation, they have repeatedly reached out to MTA to complain about the trash, to complain about just the state of the barricades, to talk about safety measures in particular. And I would say that MTA, to my knowledge, the conversations that I've attended because I'm on TNT, that MTA has said, we'll look into it, we'll look into it, we'll look into it. They submitted a response, I believe, to the office. And basically, the one thing that sort of sticks in my craw is that they don't have to make 231st ADA accessible because it's only temporary. So, I mean, it's just been a special situation at 231st where the crosswalk is single file, even though it's two lanes of people trying to, come east and go west on 231st. There's puddles. You have to walk over a wet drain cover while other people are walking next to you. And when the snow was here, that drain cover was covered with snow, very slippery. But who am I to say anything? They don't care. They don't care. So I encourage anyone who's ever slipped or fallen at 231st with the temporary guards, to certainly look at the documentation of the community board meetings because we've raised this issue repeatedly to MTA and they do not care. So
So the other businesses
Yeah.
on 231st, they're still business wise, they're still getting foot traffic, I guess. Oh, because they're not feeling it as much as the ones on 225th at 225th. Is that correct?
Well, when we conducted that walkthrough, the businesses on near 231st and Broadway that are on the east side of Broadway, north and south, they also expressed that their client base had fallen off a cliff. They were struggling to keep their businesses open. That they had been struggling since the summer, and this was nearly November when we spoke with them. I know the city, the office followed up with resources and SBS contacts and all those kinds of things, and certainly EDC was trying to get some support for those merchants, but the status quo. And I believe this project goes on until at least maybe June 2027.
Oh God.
Yeah. So maybe it's not like fully, maybe the stanchions and that whole mess won't be up until another year and change from now, but it may be, who knows? Okay, so it's TNT. Youth did mention that they were going to talk about some of the most recent public safety things and youth being youth, but nonetheless we've all been young. They were going to talk about that at their upcoming meeting, so I'll try to get to the chair before their next meeting which I'm not sure when it is, but I know it's coming up. Um, land use. I'll touch base on that really quickly. They did make sure that Raising Cane took action. I know we had to complain because that property has not been shoveling its sidewalks. So the other business across the way, which had been Rite Aid, it says that there's a grocery store coming soon. Who knows when that will be, but it looks like a straight up mess there. So there's no progress. I can follow up with the chair there as well. Lastly, public safety. We're both on that committee. We've talked quite a bit about what can be done along the Broadway corridor. Um, youth, obviously, we've talked about that a few times. Illegal parking, abandoned cars, we've talked about some metrics on that front, and if public safety could speak with the precinct about how to get some actual numbers about cars that have been reported by 311, cars that have been removed by the precinct or whatever entity at the city level is just coming to remove cars. We know that there's sort of like this recidivism, if you will, that they just, as soon as the cars are towed, another illegally parked car comes right back there and just sits until it's reported. We have all these semis, and tractor trailers and, uh, the whole mess that's parked along the reservoir. It's parked along Van Cortlandt Park South, like along our parks. Actually, that's something for Parks and Rec to work with public safety on, abandoned cars along our parks. I know it falls technically into public safety, but there's gotta be some like cross collaboration. Cause it's like you walk along the park and it's a whole corridor of just massive vehicles, tractor trailers, abandoned trailers,
Yeah.
all that. And you can't have street cleaning under it, so the streets look terrible. That's ENS. So we've got some cross collaborations. So Parks and Rec, ENS, public safety around illegal parking and abandoned cars, HHS, youth, public safety, education around youth safety and public safety. MTA, EDC, and probably public safety around, yeah, the usual mess that we've been complaining about. So those are the things that we'll follow up on. Anything else, Althea, that I've missed, that we've missed?
I think that covers it.
Okay,
Nothing else.
okay. So I can touch base with Daniel. He talked about updating the Broadway corridor map with the concerns that we have. I'll see if he is still able to do that with some of this feedback and recommendations on where we want standing committees to work together on some of these issues. Daniel also mentioned that he could work on the capital request map and update that. We'll see if he's still available to do that. Otherwise, I can certainly do fiscal year 27. Then these are essentially the activities that I believe need to be updated in the committee document for the interim report. So perhaps you and I want to have just like a separate sidebar. I know you reached out in the last couple of weeks. I just have been preoccupied. So perhaps we could just have a touch base but I think we've kind of covered a lot of the things, but maybe there's just like another quick skim of other committees that we want to do to see what other equity issues they've been focused on.
Yeah.
Then executive summary. That's usually sort of like a quick snapshot as to where we are in the community. And I think, well, my inkling is that we want to focus on these issues along the Broadway corridor because they're so centric to all of our standing committees and honestly the cross collaboration across committees really leads to safer streets and safer kids. And so I think that's where we need our urgency.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I think so. I think that's wherever we can collaborate.
Yeah.
Rather than doing things individually, that's gonna hopefully get some results or some kind of move forward or way forward, even if we don't get immediate results.
Yeah.
But definitely moving forward. Yeah. Where we're at.
And I know the community board has also asked members for their feedback on how the committee structure. I know you're new in as a community board member, but maybe this has to be fed into that deliberative process of like we have so many silos
Mhm.
and what is it doing for some of the real work that requires us to work across city agencies.
Yeah. Because if people approach a community board, there's usually some of their issues they might have an issue, but there are different committees that could help with that issue. So trying to direct them in the right direction would be better if there is this cross communication
Yeah.
and collaboration to help the community. Because they'll come in with an issue and you'll realize, well, okay, we can do this piece, but we're going to have to refer to somebody else for another piece
Yeah.
of whatever the complaint may be or the concern.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I can take a crack at the Broadway corridor. I'll send the narrative to you and Daniel,
Mm-hmm.
and then it'll be a Google Doc.
Okay.
Do you have Gmail?
Yes.
Okay. So then you can just edit it as you see fit.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the committee activities document, I'll send that to you as a Google Doc while we're in draft mode. And then the Broadway map and the Capitol map, I can add those into a Google folder and share them with you two, but they're Adobe files.
Okay.
So it's basically like one person has to edit at a time. So I'll check in with Daniel and see if he wants to take a first crack at it.
Okay.
Or vice versa. Anything else on your mind?
So the only thing I was thinking about, I don't think we talked about this piece here, where it says partner with vendors and was there an issue brought up by if I remember rightly, by the businesses about the homeless population?
Yes.
So was there any headway made on that?
I don't know.
Because it just says here, partner with vendors, NYPD on community homeless population. I mean, I'm not sure. But like I said, they see that, especially I guess early in the morning, they'll see
Yeah.
people there. It's not something that's noticeable so much during the day because there's so much activity.
Yeah.
But I do see sort of people panhandling.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that's going to feed into the homeless situation because they're, I don't know what their situation is. So
Yeah, I did bring it up at a public safety meeting, and NYPD said the storefront owners have to call
they
311.
have to go through.
Yeah, or they have to call 911 and then NYPD will come out, but still like this may be a better partnership for HHSS health hospitals and social services
Right, that's what it is.
to partner with public safety, because otherwise it's like, well, NYPD can pick them up and like
Give them a
move
ticket or
them,
something.
yeah, move them somewhere else,
Yeah.
but what we really want is like Bronx Works or
Oh, right,
Another-
homeless person's
yeah.
unit, or I don't know what they call themselves these days, but there's
Yeah.
people that, I know they were doing it on the trains, but I'm sure there is another piece for
Yeah.
the people who are just on the street. in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I can follow up with HHSS chair and see if they made any headway. It's also something for EDC. I know that's something that we were following up with vendors on, not vendors, the storefront owners to call 911 or 311 for someone who's panhandling or sleeping in a doorway or whatever. Yeah. Thank you for that. You know, the other thing doesn't fit into the Broadway corridor, but you know, the other thing that really, again, just there's not a really good way to address it other than this collaboration between HHSS and public safety is domestic violence. We've talked about it at public safety meetings because oftentimes when there are, you know, very violent cases of rape or murder in our community district, it's because of domestic violence. Most of the time, 99% of the time, when NYPD reports it, they attribute it to domestic violence. So, what are we doing about domestic violence in our community? So, NYPD, I know they work with Safe Horizon, and perhaps you know, Safe Horizon could come to one of our meetings. Maybe it's a joint meeting with HHSS, or we could certainly have them to scree, or because I know public safety is in person only, so it's hard to get the information out. But you know, perhaps there's a way that we could push this topic more.
Yeah.
Because you know, apart from some of the more recent issues, well, one of the most recent issues was, you know, headlines splashed across New York papers. It was a domestic violence. The other thing I meant to recognize was that that young baby that died over a year ago due to fentanyl exposure, that
Yes.
the daycare owners
Yeah.
were just
Yeah, they were sentenced this week,
yeah,
weren't they?
yeah. So that's another you know, certainly a movement of drugs in our community, and the safety of kids, illicit drugs especially. So perhaps those are some areas where we can ask some standing committees what they're doing. I know we've had fentanyl trainings, and you know, utilizing the
Narcan.
the
Yeah.
Narcan.
They've done that in schools too. Well, with the teachers who are, or the members of staff who are working with young people
Mm-hmm.
who might be at risk. I remember doing the training plans in school.
Yeah.
So I know there was that push
Yeah.
to get as many communities and education facilities up to knowing what to do.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. And having a kit on you and
Yeah, that's where we are. But yeah, it's important.
yeah.
Be aware. I think we can sometimes bury our heads in the sand with those types of things. Thinking, oh, it's not here.
Yeah.
But it's right there.
Yeah. All right. Well, on this uplifting meeting, anything else that you'd like to add? Shayna or Julie, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. If you'd like to share anything top of mind, anything you'd like to be added to our list, that we've discussed here tonight. We welcome it. But we certainly appreciate you joining.
No, you guys covered so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Okay, great. Well, if nothing further, then Madam Vice Chair, you want to make a motion to close the meeting?
Yes.
And congratulations on the vice chairmanship, please.
Thank you, Julie. Okay. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.